Friends, I am Lando Leyva, speaking to you now on behalf of the millions of Americans protesting for an end to police brutality facing our country. Our president, Donald Trump, has not been listening to our demands, is not focused on ending police brutality and its destruction of Black lives. Instead, he has decided to focus on ending the protests because of the destruction of property and the threat to American lives. It is not the president's interest to support these protests as compared to the COVID-19 protest earlier this year in April. The only plan provided as of yet from the Trump administration is to push for an overwhelming law and order and a strong presence of the military upon our protests. We notice that our proposals as protesters are ignored by our high-standing representative, even though we provide a just outlook on the situation. We have a set goal, and unless that goal is considered by the president, there will be no peace between us and our government. It is known to many of us the duties of the president in times such as these, and the solemn oath taken by Donald Trump was to act in the interest of the public. Suppression of his people is documentation of his failure as President of the United States. Force and suppression are the focuses of this administration. No consideration for taking action in the least drastic fashion has occurred. Rather, only the indications of force and suppression have met our protests. Instead of an accord between both sides, the necessity to instill the superiority of law and order has filled the agenda of our leader. Our protests are demanding an end to police violence. We are demanding a transformation on the current systems and all institutions that inflict violence on and marginalize Black lives, replacing them with those that value and affirm racial equality. The decades-old system of policing will reform, and our communities shall strengthen. The reason for these protests has been disregarded by our government. And unless we choose to organize and overturn the highest order, true change cannot happen. The problem, must we acknowledge, is not the protest, but our current society. These protests will end, and how they do may seem to be up to the tyranny that rules our bureaucracy. But we shall be, and always have been, the ones to decide the country's fate. That decision is in our own hands. The position of our president in this situation is, and always has been, to act in the interest of the public, to the best of his ability. Our president has chosen to act in his own interest before ours. He has put himself before our country. It is not simply Black lives, Black Americans in this fight, because it is all Americans who must overcome our tradition of systemic racism. The capability of technology has opened the eyes of our nation. Let us look back at the moment that a man laid his knee on another man's neck, and let us realize the capabilities of that technology to bring about justice to our nation. No part of the country is free from responsibility, from prolonging Black justice. No part of the country is free from choosing to act indifferent. Nevertheless, now is the time to join together and to end not our protest, but the structured racism running through the veins of our country. We are not free until we have complete humanity structured in our country. We must understand that even in times where our highest representative chooses tyranny, it is our own will to unify for democracy against injustice. This is not simply a black problem. This is an American problem. We will not leave this to be solved only by black protesters, but by entire communities. If it affects one of us, it affects all of us. And leaving this problem to be solved by others while we stand indifferent shall flourish the residue of privilege running through our country. The failure of a country, must we understand, is not because of its people, but because of its lack of leadership. From a lack of leadership, our country can fall when it needs it most. We must recognize that the country and the people depend on each other, as both face common difficulties. We shall stand strong and stand with one truth together.